Hello everyone, welcome to the Sapient Academia. Today we'll be talking about those poets who truly laid foundation of English Romantic literature. And these pioneering poets laid the groundwork for Romantic literature. Romanticism was not an abrupt phenomenon. It was not the lyrical ballad, which is often credited. Other less known works which we will be discussing in this video actually formed the basis of this literary era. Unfortunately, we often don't know, we overlook these influential poets, and many of us are unfamiliar with their remarkable achievements in dismantling the new classical framework. So watch the video and let us know about these great poets. So the first one in the list is James Thomson. Many of us don't know about James Thomson, that it was in fact he who broke away from the traditions, from the norms, and he is a typical transitional poet. Chronologically, he belongs to the first half of the 18th century, the contemporary of Pope. He was a contemporary of Pope, yet he did not follow the Popian school. He broke away from the traditions, he did not follow the heroic couplet. As it's quite vivid that the poets and writers of the Augustan and Restoration age, they were following the heroic couplet. This was James Thomson, who did not follow the heroic couplet, who went for liberalism in writing. And it is one of the characteristics and prominent features of Romanticism. So, James Thomson must be credited because look at his date of birth and date of death, that is from 1700 to 1748, and the lyrical ballad which had published in 1798. So many years before the lyrical ballad, it was James Thomson who laid foundation of Romantic literature. Let us go through his one of the important works, that is Seasons. It is an important work because this work is best for accurate and sympathetic descriptions of natural scenes. So for the first time he did not go for the didactic kind of literature, because you can see that in the Augustan age, in the Restoration age, it was sort of didactic kind of literature. So James Thomson went for the description of the natural scenes, and he must be credited. Even Dr. Johnson has praised him, and Dr. Johnson says that his diction is in the highest degree florid and luxuriant. It is too exuberant and sometimes may be charged with filling the ear more than the mind. Further, we can say that these poets, James Thomson and the others, which I'm going to discuss one by one, are called transitional, and they're called transitional because they made transition. They are, you can say, a blend of both classicism and romanticism. So they were trying to get out of the classical literature and they were making the transition. And you can say that these transitional poets, they laid foundation of the Romantic literature. And we can say that numerous of them cracked the classical edifice, the classical glass, and through those cracks we can see, we can peep the multicolored light of Romanticism. So it was not just, you can say, the lyrical ballad abruptly that the Romanticism started. There is a, you can say, a hectic exertion behind the lyrical ballad. Let us go through the second important transitional poet who has done a remarkable job. And here is Oliver Goldsmith. In fact, he was very friendly with Dr. Johnson and Alexander Pope, but yet he did not follow either of them. You can say the individual genius of Oliver Goldsmith flourished, and he went for unusual kind of writing, and you can witness it in The Deserted Village, one of his works. In this particular work, you can say this poem, which is rich in natural description, and it is vibrant with a peculiar note of sentiment and melancholy, which foreshadows the 19th century romantics and Romantic literature. So Oliver Goldsmith must be credited. He's, you can say, in the list of the transitional poets. He, along with the other poets, have led this foundation. And how can we forget Thomas Percy? He is known in the history of English literature not for original poetry, but for his compilation of ballads, sonnets, historical songs, and metrical romances, which he published in 1765 under the title Relics of Ancient English Poetry. This work did a lot to revive public interest in that kind of poetry which had gone out of vogue in the age of Dryden and Pope, because people were following the school of Dryden and the school of Pope, and the kind of poetry which was before the ages, the romantic kind of poetry, it was not in vogue anymore. So this book contained poetry from different ages, from the Middle Ages to the reign of Charles, and the work had a tremendous and lasting popularity. About its influence on the poets who were to come, we may quote Wordsworth. Wordsworth says, "I don't think that there is an able writer in verse of the present day who would not be proud to acknowledge his obligation to the relics." So in fact, it was one of the important work of the time, and still it is one of the important works, because this particular work had laid foundation. Thomas Percy, not with his original writing, but with the compilation of the early romantic works which he combined and published. So he was trying to revive the romantic kind of literature. So Thomas Percy must not be forgotten. And we are moving ahead with one of the marvelous boy of the transitional poets. And the marvelous boy is Thomas Chatterton. Chatterton is referred to by Wordsworth in his poem Resolution and Independence. And William Wordsworth in this particular poem says, "The marvelous boy, the sleepless soul that perished in his pride." So Chatterton indeed was a marvelous boy. And there are controversies about his death. Some people say that he drank arsenic because he was fighting with poverty and died at the age of 17. So you must remember, he is the youngest poet in the history of English literature. Died at the age of 17. And Hudson has praised his poems such as Isla and the Ballad of Charity. Isla is one of the remarkable works of Thomas Chatterton, and according to Hudson, because these both work are probably the most wonderful things ever written by a young boy of 17 age, of the Chatterton age we are talking about. And because there are another clear indication of the fast growing curiosity of critics and the public regarding everything belonging to the Middle Ages. So Chatterton's work considerably influenced the Romantic poets, who were intensely interested in everything medieval. So Chatterton, he revived the medieval kind of writing, and he must be credited. And here is Thomas Gray, one of the finest and most learned men of the Europe of his day. He started his career as a straight-jacketed classicist and ended as a genuine romantic. Started as a classicist and ended as a genuine romantic. His work, according to Hudson, is a kind of epitome of the changes which were coming over the literature of his time. So his first attempts, you can say, the Alliance of Education and Government and the Ode on a Distant Prospect of Eden College, were classical in spirit, as we already discussed. Started as a classicist and ended as a genuine romantic. So his initial works are classical in nature. But Thomas Gray is known for one of his prominent works, that is an elegy written in a country churchyard. The finest poem, and earned him the praise of even Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson, who condemned most of Gray's poetry. So even he praised this particular poem. His last poems, The Farrell Sisters and The Descent of Odin, they're romantic fragments, and with which we step out of the 18th century and find ourselves in the full stream of Romanticism. So we cannot forget Thomas Gray while discussing Romanticism. So reason of discussing these poets and their works, were to let you know about the foundation of Romanticism. So, while discussing Romanticism, we must not forget these poets. In the second part of the video, we will be discussing the rest of the poets, the rest of the transitional poets who have done a remarkable job in laying the foundation of Romanticism. Stay tuned with us, like, subscribe, and share.